We're live?
Yes, we are live.
All right. I think I'm going to need to start with some comments about when grades are appropriate. So the
Right.
parents that
So
disagree
it's
with
not
me
like, yeah,
aren't
immediately
like,
just.
oh my God, this is horrible. This is propaganda.
Right. Could you give me my cup?
I'm going to share this to a couple different groups.
Sure.
All right. So there are times when grades are appropriate, but they seem to be like a subset of, like a pretty small subset of what we try to teach young people. We both watched, or I watched this documentary last night called Most Likely to Succeed. I actually ended up watching it 1.5 times because then after I got done, I was like, honey, you got to watch this. So I watched some more with my wife. Then this morning I showed my daughters.
We got to watch a movie in the morning.
Well, documentary, yeah. And it was about a high school called High Tech High. High Tech High randomly selects by lottery kids that live within a certain distance of High Tech High. The teachers there are paid on average a little bit less than average for the state. And, oh yeah, let her know we're broadcasting.
Sure.
Thanks. And High Tech High also doesn't have grades, and they have an approach that's very similar to We Equal School. And I didn't know they existed until last night.
We're live.
We're live, mommy. Thank you.
It's time.
Yeah. So I'm watching this documentary, and it's got the Khan from Khan Academy, Sir Kenneth Robinson from TED, does one of my favorite TED Talks ever on creativity. It's got an executive at Google and several other individuals that you should really be paying attention to, essentially reinforcing the philosophy that High Tech High has employed. Now, High Tech High ends up having a graduation rate of like 98%.
Yeah. Getting into college, yeah.
Oh, that's getting into college is 98%.
Mm-hmm.
So the graduation rate has got to be like, I don't know, 99%? Because usually you graduate before you
go yeah, and it was saying like even though the teachers weren't teaching all of the curriculum and it was mostly project based, they on average scored 10% higher on the SAT.
Yeah, so they're not teaching to tests, but they score 10% higher on average than other schools.
Because I think like these students like practice math on their own or something and study for.
Well, they're actually applying it.
They're applying what they're learning.
Yeah, so it's like if you were to be learning about like maybe like just like calculations and then you actually use it in your project and you're going to remember it and you're also going to remember how that relates to different things and stuff like that. So
yeah, they also talked about a study in this where they took like the leading advanced placement course students from a variety of different schools and did a test. Here, you're shaking the thing. A test to see how well they would have scored on their final exams 3 months later. So they brought in a bunch of these students. They retake their final exams, and the average grade on the exams went from a B to an F. So they're basically, the students aren't learning the material to retain it because they're not actually using it to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
They're just basically trying to ace the test. So that's the thing. You've kind of we've set up a system where a lot of what school revolves around are getting good grades and particularly trying to do really well on tests. And there's almost no project-based learning. To the extent that there are projects, it's almost never projects that the kids are picking. So I wanted to share something that happened today that I thought was really important. We just spent like an hour talking about it upstairs, and it relates to Isla. Maybe Isla, you could talk about what happened with genomics, and maybe Sume, you can give some background on the
Right,
genomics
yeah.
presentation,
Sure.
and then Isla can come in with her piece of it and talk about what
Okay.
happened. Go ahead.
So we're having a genomics theme demo day, I guess, where we're just having demo day this week, April 24th, 2 p.m. Eastern time. We are having, or the topic is genomics, and so we're having a bunch of different kids talk about risks of genomics and things like that, and the history of genomics, and so Isla also has a piece that she is going to present at that demo day. So
Yeah, a bunch of us working on it. Me too.
yeah.
Go ahead, Isla. So tell us about your piece. What's the title and what are you trying to cover?
Genomics miracles, and I'm trying to cover like how people, what's it called again? The place that's making the CRISPR. How CRISPR is has Cas9, and it's like and it's curing these, or like nearly almost curing all of it, and curing these things like sickle cell and the Huntington disease, and also like even COVID. There are a few cures that cure COVID using genomics therapy, and so that's basically what I'm talking about.
That was really good. That was really excellent. So here's the thing about the way that schools structure projects. They go through a lot of trouble to make sure that whatever assignment they give a student, first of all, like the students don't decide the curriculum, the teacher does, right? So the students have no say, but
Well, the teacher doesn't do it either. It's the
sometimes they do.
Oh, yeah,
To some
sometimes.
degree, there's some flexibility. So the teachers come up with, here's the project, and they make sure that the project is always age appropriate. Because God forbid our children ever run into a problem that they don't know how to solve, or that's too hard. And they might have to actually exercise some critical thinking to understand that, wait a minute, maybe I need to change how I'm approaching this because this is overwhelming. So the way we've structured our schools is set up in such a way where we create this false world where everything is planned out. Every child knows that if the teacher says you can do it in an hour, you can do it in an hour. And if the homework's due tomorrow, then you know it's doable by tomorrow. Because anybody that's actually worked in a professional environment and has had a real job knows that there's never a situation where your boss might ask you to do something and then you have to come back and be like, hey, I ran into a problem, it's actually going to take longer, and know how to set boundaries and know how to manage expectations. That never happens. No.
Yeah.
No.
Unheard of.
So why would we teach our kids how to do that? Can you imagine that? Imagine so this happens in weekly school all the time. But imagine in a public school, teacher assigns something and you go up to the teacher and be like, hey, I think we may have gotten ahead of ourselves. This is going to take longer than expected. Here's the issues that I ran into. I think that this new deadline kind of a structure may help.
Well, that
Also,
won't
we
happen.
could reduce like what we're trying to do. Like here's an alternative approach that maybe won't take quite as long. Happy to go into detail at your earliest convenience. You send that email to your teacher. Ooh! F. Fail. Fail. Child trying to actually use grown-up real life skills for managing expectations and determining the best approach to handling something. doesn't happen because it's a fake environment. It's this made up environment where everything's always perfectly tailored to make it easy for the teacher and to rank order the kids.
Well,
and tell them if they
they
know
won't
something.
And also,
even,
yeah.
say it's hard because they make sure that it's perfectly at their level or below, or like not too hard, and like
Because God forbid our children learn to develop an intelligence for whether or not they understand something. It's very important for all of our children to be dependent on a teacher to tell them if they know stuff.
Yeah, and also like, let's say the teacher
I'm being
says-
sarcastic. I want to be
Yes.
very clear so people understand.
Yeah.
That's sarcasm.
Mhm.
It is critically important that people, especially young people, learn to know when they don't know something.
Yeah, and also like, let's say the teacher says, well, you have to get the homework done by tomorrow, even if maybe the kid has something that's going on at home, or maybe they have like some extra curriculum, and it's not actually reasonable for the teacher to be asking. Well, it's, you can't even really have any say in that, because it's like, well, I mean because it's supposed to, and they kind of made it so that well it's supposed to be doable by tomorrow, so you can't, then you'll have to try to just put in the extra time.
Well, sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's all kinds of other issues, but I'm just going to focus on this grade.
Right,
one.
yeah.
The grade, the in order for you to give a grade, you have to decide, like, what's the range of expected outcomes. So you have to tailor the experience in the project or the test to make sure that, you know, the child like is the expectation is somehow in this range of what you expect.
Mm-hmm.
But even there, it's so far removed from reality. So we're giving this genomics presentation, right? A bunch of young people at Waco School all teaming up to do this. There's no grade, obviously. We kind of get graded in the sense that when we put it out there, we're going to get feedback from people. And if it's not interesting or helpful, if we get something wrong, if we have our facts wrong and somebody calls us out on it, then we're going to go, But that's the way that you're graded in real life, is you create something and you put it out there for the world, and then you see how people react to it, right? And actually knowing how well you did is another important skill.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have practice. You want young people to have practice thinking about the things that they've done and reflecting on them and seeking feedback.
Yeah, even if you do get like even if you do get an A in school, then it's like, well, why would I need to? Like,
You don't need to ask anybody
Yeah.
if you did a good job.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to ask other students. You don't have to talk to your parents. You don't have to think critically at all about your own
Performance.
performance.
Could have done better.
Because the teacher gave you a letter that somehow is supposed to represent what you did. And that teacher's supposed to know what you were capable of. They're supposed to know, I mean, how many, like, any idea that you had on how to make the project better doesn't count, by the way. So that's gone. So that works against you.
Even if you have an idea on how you can do better, you can't really apply
No
it.
ideas allowed. Follow the instructions, damn it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. I'm trying to
I
teach
mean,
my
like,
kids
if
right.
you were done with the project and you were like, oh, well, I could have done this better in the project, then you can't really go back and actually change it. Or even if you did, you can't have another round of iteration, because then you can't like seek feedback from other people. So like if someone were to write like an article or have a project at Waco School, and then they like redo it, they change it a bunch, and they kind of do another round of iteration, and they want to get more feedback, and they could like ask people like, oh, do you want to take a look at this? Or maybe they could even present it again on demo day.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've told the story yet about.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Tell the story.
Yeah.
Sure, let's tell the story. Isla, well, I didn't want to bring it up unless you wanted to get into the details. But yeah, go
You
ahead.
were just planning to tell it, so I was wondering if you.
No, you go
forgot
ahead.
about
What
it.
happened?
Well, was working on the genomics miracles article, and I realized that we needed that people also should know how it works. So I started
So
spending
not just
a
that
lot of-
miracles happen, but how did CRISPR-Cas9 actually cure people with sickle cell disease?
Yeah. And so I just tried. I started trying really, really hard, and I started watching all these videos that made my brain numb, and I just
Yes, I get that.
worked to the very like soul, and that wasn't good. And
I'll
I
take
just-
over from here.
Yeah.
So Mommy and I walk in to Isla's office, and she's sitting there in front of her computer, and she's not crying, but she's just like,
I can make the face.
go ahead.
Okay.
I like
Yeah, that's
mine
it.
better.
That's it, yeah. So she spent like an hour watching every CRISPR-Cas9 like gene editing video she could find on YouTube. And she's just like, I don't understand it. It's just so complicated. It's like, why is it so complicated? I mean, it's just a protein that's like, curing people with sickle cell. Like, come on, it can't be that. Jesus Christ, all these. I'm just gonna see double helixes. Everywhere I go, I just see double helixes. It's just like genes everywhere. So anyway, so Mommy and I walk in there like, who told you needed to understand how it worked? You're like, well, it's kind of important. I want my audience to know. They can't just be like, it cured them. Like, they gotta, it's a good question. We're like, yeah, it's a good question, but like, you haven't even taken the prerequisites to biology yet. Like, you're not, you could probably figure it out, but it's probably too much to handle. And so this is the thing that I guess like teachers and parents might be like, oh no, our child tried to do something that was too hard for them. Because God forbid they find out that the world's complicated. And that they might like run into something that they don't understand.
Serious playlist plug.
And their mind explodes and they like start to lose all faith in humanity and they're like, I'm a worthless human being. Don't understand CRISPR. So I'm serious. So this is the story I was telling her. I was like, only 1% of the population goes to graduate school. 1 in 1,000 go to get a PhD. I got my master's. You're generally not tasked with picking a project that's really hard, that would take like many months to complete. Ever through traditional schooling, all the way up through getting a 4-year degree. It's only after you go to grad school that you have to complete a thesis or a dissertation. And it's only then when you try to deeply understand one thing and actually push the body of knowledge that you start to understand how complicated the world really is. And you don't really fully get it. And there's an old saying that if you spend a day in a foreign country, you could write a book. But if you spend a year in a foreign country, you feel like you could barely write a haiku. Like you just realize how much more complicated this culture and this place is, that the longer you're there and the more you understand it, the more you realize you don't know. And frankly, 99% of the population never even, at least through traditional schooling, never is pushed or chooses to dive in deep enough to something to a point when they realize, wow, this is just one little itty bitty teeny tiny thing that I'm trying to understand. For my wife, it was
Des.
rings. It was renewable.
Something.
It had to do with ethanol. Anyway, so she's like this world expert in these rings, this ring market, tiny financial market. For me, it was like tax policy, which was huge. Like, I still don't really understand most of what there is to know, but I had to read hundreds of papers. I wrote a 110-page thesis. I didn't need to write a huge page, but I kept reading new papers about it. I'm like, wow, this is interesting. Oh, I need to do, because I wanted to like write the Bible on tax policy. Like, I wanted to fully, deeply understand everything that there was. And it wasn't until like 6 months into it where I'm like, I just want to like graduate and get a job. It's just like too much, you know?
Right.
But I understood how complicated it was. This family spent the past year obsessively trying to understand everything there is to know about
How to
motivating. Yeah, go ahead.
How to empower children to learn and do stuff.
How do you get kids to want to learn? We probably are getting close to having read everything that there is to know and watched like every speech and just deeply understand. But it took a year and it was like a family effort. So you want your kids to know how complicated the world is. You want them to try to do something that's too hard. You want them to appreciate how big the world is and know what they don't know. And so, and you
They also won't want to explore, because if they don't realize that there's a bunch that they don't know, then they won't actually take the initiative to be like, well, what is it that, what are the unknown unknowns? What is the things that I this is weird. What are the things that I could be really interested in, but I don't actually know exist? I'm gonna stop right there.
I'm hungry.
Children, okay, I'm almost done.
I
I feel like I'm just getting like more and more into this, but it's like, yeah, if you want your kids to not be curious, keep spoon feeding them things in such a way where they never see that something could actually be way more complicated than they even know. Because God forbid they realize that their understanding of everything is like that. And it's true for adults too. That's the scary part. It's true for like everybody. In grades, it's like you take an economics course in 5th grade and you get an A in econ. Not Sume. They gave her a B. That's why she quit. But like to the kid that got the A, they're like, yay, I know everything about economics.
I don't have to keep learning.
I don't have to keep learning. I understand everything now. Yay. It's just wrong.
I can just forget everything in 3 months.
It's not true. It's just not, it's bad. Sorry, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's not helpful. What you want our kid, I'm almost done, seriously. Okay. What you want your kids, stop. Here's what you want your kids to do. You want your kids to know how much they don't know so that they actually want to explore. You want your kids to come up with projects on their own. But that also means knowing when they bit off more than they could chew, so they know how to redirect. You want kids to learn how to manage expectations. You want kids to know how to pivot for themselves and manage their own expectations. You want your kids to be extremely resilient. So when they run in, when they're teaming up with other people or when they're working on their own thing, that when they run into a problem that's too hard, or they run into one that's too easy, that they can then, adjust and be able to take and make the best use of their time and not rely on somebody else to tell them when they know something. So that they develop an intelligence for knowing if they know something by themselves. An independent approach where they learn to reach out and get feedback from other people. You want your kids to develop these skills. You know why? Because that's what real life is like. That's real life. You're preparing them for real life. So don't create an artificial thing that's not anything close to real life. Or else you're preparing your kids for a fake world that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like,
And I mean,
prepare your kids for reality. Reality doesn't have grades. Mic drop.
Woo!
Let's get some dinner.
okay. Bye.
Thai food's awesome.